I'd like to do now is just give you a quick update. I want to say that the Faculty of Information, students, staff, and faculty have shown tremendous resilience during our transition to remote engagement as a result of the pandemic. It's been a journey, it's been a challenge, but we've all come together, and I think we've done a remarkable job, and I'm grateful to be part of this community. Our fall courses have all been delivered remotely, and so will our winter term courses. And we've made this decision in line with the health recommendations and in working closely with our colleagues across the University of Toronto. We've hired a team of our own students, many of our own students, some students from other parts of the university, to support our instructors and students in the transition to remote delivery, and have established other kinds of supports for students that have been impacted by the challenges of the pandemic. We don't know what the fall situation will be, of course, but we all have been quite encouraged by recent news of vaccines that have shown that they're effective. So that's a positive thing, and we're monitoring that closely, obviously. We'll continue to work closely with our colleagues across the university and make decisions about the fall when we have enough information to do so. We will be building on all of the infrastructure and the supports that we have available to us in the event that we will continue to have remote participation, but as soon as it is safe and we are able to do so, we will be putting in place some in-person activities. And also we have tremendous safety protocols across the university that will allow us to do so safely. And we will ensure, obviously, that we were able to continue to deliver the world-class programs that we have here in the faculty. So I would take questions in the chat as we go through if you need. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. All right, next on the agenda, I'd like to introduce you to Professor Foscarini, who is going to give an overview of the Masters of Information program.
Hello everyone, my name is Fiorella Foscarini and I am going to briefly introduce the program, and after me my colleagues will explain more in detail what each concentration involves, and so I'm just giving this broad overview now. So you can see in this rather complex slide that there are 8 concentrations. It's in the middle of the thing. Let me take the pointer. So these are the concentrations, and so normally you would choose 1 or 2, maximum 2, and you can change your concentration. So if you say you start saying that you love archives and you want to do archives and records management, but then you discover UXD, user experience design, you may decide to combine both concentrations or move to another one, up to you to a certain point. So if your choice to change is in the first year, maybe the first term, that's ideal. The longer you stay in the program, of course, you longer go in depth into one concentration or the 2 that you have chosen. But anyway, it's flexible. You can do co-op and 2 concentrations. So later you will hear more about the co-op option. So there is also a thesis option for those of you who love to do research and may develop ideas during your courses about new areas to explore. So this is something that I'd be happy to discuss with you later. Maybe if you choose the thesis option, it's not something that you decide right away. Yes, thesis and concentration, absolutely. So concentration is the basic that you all choose. If you really don't know what to focus on, there is a general program option that involves some required courses, so it's not fully free, but you can take, of course, more electives if you choose the general program. We have also several collaborative specializations. You see them down here. Very exciting and related to specific aspects of information and data. So also you will hear more about this from my colleagues. And what else can I tell you? That so of course it's a program, as you have heard already from the Dean, that focuses on information, technology, people, but really at the center is the human factor, society. So what you want to become when you choose the MI program is you want to become an information professional that will help not only store, retrieve, manage information in a good way, but you also want to change society to make sure that there is an emphasis on diversity, inclusion through the tools that people use to manage information and systems, right? So we really want to help you become a new kind of professional out there who understands the impact of the digital world in whatever we do, in whatever form, but especially understand the needs of the humans that shape the tools and are shaped by the tools that they use. So it's, I think it's a great time to think about enrolling in a program like this. As we heard, we hope to be able to meet in person in the fall. We don't know yet, but there are many new developments that make us optimistic about the future. And so I just wish you all the best in your choice of your future career. And I hope to see many of you in the near future. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. And next we have Professor Sertam, who's going to talk about the Archives and Records Management concentration.
Okay, hi everybody. So welcome. Welcome to my closet where I'm sitting, but welcome to the faculty. And thank you for just giving me 5 minutes of your time where I can speak a little bit more about the Archives and Records Management concentration. So the ARM concentration focuses really on the study of records, so the nature and the value of records and the ways that we can manage records across time. So when I talk about records, what I'm talking about are all of the different ways that we remember and that we inscribe evidence. So things like government files, family photo albums, oral histories, banking records, news footage, emails, tweets, right? Everything that we produce as we go about our lives and our work. So in ARM, we study the proper management of records when they're kept by their creators. So that's the records management side of things, how records are managed in offices, in working environments. And then on the archival side, we decide what, from all the information that we're going to be talking about today, we actually want to keep permanently as a society, and how then we acquire that material, how we arrange and describe it, how we preserve it, and then how we actually make it available to a broad set of publics. So as both Wendy and Fiorella have mentioned, we are also very much interested in the human aspect of this work. And what really drives us is not just records, but understanding how human beings and how communities create and accumulate and activate records in their lives and in their work, and how as information professionals we can work more collaboratively with those communities and individuals to do more effective work and to do more ethical work as well. So our graduates end up working in a variety of fields, but especially as records managers and as archivists, it's probably fairly clear. They can work in a variety of contexts. So that could be working in government, working for banks and other corporations, working for nonprofits, in universities and colleges, and then in the GLAM sector more widely with galleries, libraries, archives, and museums, or for community groups and organizations. Some of our graduates also work in very specific roles. So for example, as freedom of information officers or privacy analysts, and that's because the ARM program gives them that deep knowledge of records and record requirements. So in our current climate that we're living in here, which is a global pandemic and increased pressure on institutions to really reckon with histories of racism, colonialism, and exclusion, we see even more the importance of records and archival work. Right now, a lot of people are working from home, and so records managers have to get in there to make sure that people can access the records that they need from their work in order to do their work at home, so that business can continue to operate, so that organizations can continue to function. And we need to make sure that those records are being kept in a good way to ensure privacy and confidentiality and security, as well as people have them at home. A lot of archivists now are working away from their physical collections, which can be quite difficult, but they're spending this time thinking about how to increase digital access to their immense holdings and how they can start to do more to acquire digital records as well and build systems to support that work. Archivists are also already thinking about how we're going to remember this time in the future and what kind of material we need to collect and document in order to understand in the future how government and organizations and businesses and universities made decisions during this time and how they adapted and changed, and also how ordinary everyday people experienced this time as well in the diversity of ways that we're all experiencing it. So already archives are beginning to launch collecting projects to do just that. So they're also highlighting material from their holdings that can help us to better understand our time by looking at the past, right? So that might mean pulling on material that documents how we adjusted and adapt 100 years ago during the Spanish flu, or the effects of the AIDS epidemic on particular communities as well. And then we have ongoing calls for reconciliation and racial justice that are resonating more and more in the field. And two recent developments include the Association of Canadian Archivists launching their equity commitments a few months ago, and the release of the first public draft of a reconciliation framework for Canadian archives. So it is really an exciting time for the field, whether despite or maybe because of these new challenges and the way that these challenges give us an invitation to rethink how we're doing things, what kind of a future we want to have going forward in some kind of a new normal. So in the program, if you choose the ARM concentration, our courses begin to teach you those theories and methods of managing records, of appraising and arranging and describing them, so some of the core functions of that work. And then you get to choose a whole roster of elective courses that help to support your own interests and pursue your own goals. So ARM electives will look more closely at particular areas. So that might be community archiving practices or issues of copyright, digital records, access, advocacy, and outreach, or Professor Foscarini has a terrific course on record keeping cultures. And then you get to take advantage of this great interdisciplinarity at the faculty, as Dean Duff mentioned, and you can pull on courses in other concentrations that lead you to where you want to go. So that could be, understanding interpretation and curation better, the photographic record, looking at information architecture or data if you're interested in data archiving, or rare book librarianship if you're interested in special collections work. So if you're interested in ARM, feel free to come by this afternoon to our breakout room or our separate room, and I'll get into more depth into the courses and what the experience is like for students in our program. So yeah, I'll put my email in the chat as well in case there are any other questions, and I can answer any questions in the chat as well. So I'll pass things over. Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you. Next, we have Professor Ross to talk about the Culture and Technology concentration.
Thanks, Andrea. Let me add my welcome to that of our dean and my colleagues. The Culture and Technology concentration offers students and faculty an opportunity to explore the way technology shapes culture and the way culture shapes technology. When we speak at a crude level about culture, we're talking about the shared behaviors, practices, and values of a community and how they interact. We all belong to a diversity of layered networks of communities, from a hierarchical layering of global, national, regional, and local communities to networks of social, work, and action communities. The introduction of a new technology or the discovery of a new way to use an older technology impacts each of us in all these cultural contexts in varying ways, and often these are unanticipated. I'm sure that you can think of many technologies that have impacted our lives. Let me take, for instance, the washing machine, which transformed the way in which we cleaned our clothing. It had, for example, the positive effect of eliminating the drudgery and dangers, such as harsh chemicals of laundry, and freeing up for many, and mostly women, time. But it disrupted labor and social practices which had evolved around the process of doing laundry, from businesses to the allocation of work to the to the disruption of those communication communities which had existed around the village washing station. The chance to gossip, the chance to chat, the chance to share information and knowledge. Or think about the technology of the plastic bag as it transformed the nature and culture of shopping, but downstream contributed to the destruction of our environment, from the Great Pacific Garbage Patch to the nanoplastic particles in the snow in the Pyrenees Mountains in southern France, and I hear now even on Mount Everest. Medical technologies, from new drugs to instrumentation to in vitro fertilization to gene splicing, all have had micro and macro impacts. There are thousands of these technological examples, from writing to glassmaking to printing to the telephone to cars to pesticides to airplanes to digitization to the internet to the smartphone and to the algorithm. Even abstract conceptualizations such as contracts and money are technologies that have had huge cultural ramifications. The introduction of network and desktop computers into offices changed the work on a macro level. But on the micro level of the department or the company as a whole, they've reshaped whole industries. Think newspapers, border control, or production. And in turn, reshaped social interactions, human relationships, practices, and work cultures. Cultural resistance to new technologies can be seen in all aspects of society. For instance, in businesses, new technologies designed to enable organizations to work efficiently are often met with adoption resistance because the changes they bring to the individual and to the culture of the organization. I think just this week I saw that Microsoft, there was a discussion in newspapers about Microsoft's technology being used, their Word and so forth, being used to monitor performance of workers at home. Given these ramifications, surely being able to investigate, explain, anticipate, and reason about the relationship between technology and culture is an essential knowledge frame. And that's what culture and technology gives you the capacity to do. To paraphrase Toronto's own Marshall McLuhan, who laid the foundation for studies of culture and technology beginning some 70 years ago, people make technologies and technologies transform people. That is, technologies emerge from or in response to cultural contexts and in turn transform, often in unexpected ways, the cultures of the communities from which they emerged or which adopt them. The culture and technology concentration offers students the opportunity to examine how cultures, societies, and the nature of what it is to be human affect and is transformed by technological development. This concentration provides an environment to give students the ability to identify resources and tools to study, assess, reason about, establish policy statements in regard to, and offer explanations for the impact of technology on culture. The courses in the concentration will provide you with the ability to engage in these analyses at both the level of the local and the global. For instance, how does the smartphone transform work in your company? To how is African society being transformed by the cell phone? To how has the smartphone transformed global cultures? Increasingly, governments and companies recognize they need to understand and reason about the relationship and impact of technology and culture. Graduates of the program have taken up work in financial services, consultancy, healthcare, law, and government. They work for such employers as the Province of Ontario, the City of Toronto, Creative Works Marketing, McLaren, McCann, Ontario Arts Council Rogers Site Scout. Given our experiences over the last 8 months, as a result of the pandemic, the culture and technology concentration has never been more relevant to our understanding of current conditions and will certainly continue to be increasingly relevant into the future. I invite you to join me after this session if you want to hear more about the culture and technology concentration, if I can answer any questions. Thank you very much, and I'm delighted you have an interest in coming to the Faculty of Information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next we have Professor Stevenson to talk about the Library and Information Science concentration.
Hi, yeah, I'm just gonna share my video, but I'm having a little bit of trouble. Okay, I think we're good. Although you can't see me. Oh, yes, you can. All right, I'm on. First of all, my warmest welcome to, and a shout out to all of you that are interested in our Library and Information Science stream. So a few questions you have, and I will try to answer. Why would you study this concentration or think about studying it? Not since the social eruptions of the 1960s has the need for critically and politically engaged librarians been quite as acute. Misinformation and mistrust are everywhere, and the world needs trusted information professionals who can critically assess, organize, and make available information in service to the public good and across the life course. A quick glance at today's news, and we realize that the dream of the internet as a democratizing tool has not quite delivered on its promise. To quote an article by Simon Ross entitled, "Whatever Happened to the Internet's Promise?" quote, "The digital revolution and resulting democratization of everything promised to lead us to a wealthier, healthier, more equitable world, one that brought us closer together, erasing both physical and virtual boundaries. But unfortunately," end quote, "but unfortunately that's not the world or the cyberspace in which we live." He goes on to describe the kinds of things we are witnessing through our devices, but also the things that we ourselves are creating, and the insularity of social media and the insularity that social media and the internet enable, such that one can choose to be exposed to only those things that you like-minded people, like-minded ideas and messages, and news that conforms to your worldview. Contrary views are met with hostility. Not a recipe for tolerance, let alone healthy debate and meaningful exchange on issues we all face as citizens who occupy different positions along the political spectrum. The field of librarianship, and specifically those institutions within which it is practiced, were created to address these very issues of ignorance by ensuring that people had access to the information and knowledge they needed to be responsible citizens and members of society, starting from childhood. So why would you study this concentration? Because the world needs librarians in a way that has not been felt in a long while, and it needs them the way it did before Google appeared on the scene. Obviously, Google is not helping dispel fake news, misinformation, and so on. In a sense, COVID has been good for the field. And what's good for this public service-oriented work is good for communities. Our goal is to graduate confident, competent, and energized professionals ready to act according to an inner ethical compass that can build the trust necessary to support the empowerment of individuals and communities and whole societies. So what's the concentration about? My colleague and a wonderful professor in the LIS stream, Dr. Jenna Hartel, describes it really nicely. She describes a world, two sort of spheres. One is the sphere of documentation, and that's not just print, but all media, anything that's been inscribed for the purposes of communication or curation or archiving or whatever, all of that information. And then there's the world of people, and that's people in all their complexities and all their all the roles they play in the world: workers, consumers, citizens, children, and so on. And the point of the librarian is to be that intermediary between those two spheres and to act as a guide and an assistant and someone to help penetrate that other sphere for the benefit of the user. So your core courses will provide you with the language and the vocabulary with which to engage together as burgeoning professionals with these goals and ideas, as well as enliven your electives and other opportunities for learning that you find here. So why at the iSchool? Because access to a wide range of complementary courses offerings that only enhance your value in the field of professional librarianship. So you've heard about a number of concentrations. You're going to hear about some more. And we always encourage our LIS students to to take from these other areas, because it does increase your value. The kinds of questions that we explore in our courses and the kinds of skill and knowledge that are learned. So here are some questions that we're looking at this year. What's the role of the librarian in the Black Lives Matter movement and the anti-racism movements in general? And this includes attending to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and interrogating how the field has been complicit and reproduced oppressive structures in its classification schemes. And Dewey has a lot to answer for his schemes for organizing the world's knowledge, and so too does the Library of Congress. We wonder about the role of libraries in bridging the digital divide. We look at the role of libraries in bridging the wealth gap. We take deep dives into information behavior. So how do people look for, seek, capture, and think about information and their own information practices? We think about information infrastructures that underpin our lives as citizens, workers, and consumers, and how are these things like privacy, surveillance, pirating, ownership of one's material treated, and who owns what? What are reputable sources of information on current topics? How do you, as a librarian, manage your own internal biases when engaging with users? How do you communicate and organize that information in ways consistent with the field's commitment to intellectual freedom and social responsibility? And what is the role of information in leisure, pleasure, and education? That's just a few things. Yeah, and the kinds of assignments you'll do, in addition to sort of your standard academic papers, we have people doing all kinds of stuff now because we recognize it's a different world, and people bring very different skills to the table. So people create educational videos, let's say for an information literacy course, or do storytelling, or produce artworks related to information. We've had people conduct original exploratory studies of information involving semi-structured interviews. We've had people utilize photography to analyze information environments. You might be asked to create a library programming proposal, or plan a real-world event. So yeah, so these are some of the assignments. So what will I be able to do after I graduate? And I always ask, what won't you be able to do? You'll be able to rapidly seek, find, organize, curate, and then provide access to information and knowledge. And you can take that skill pretty well anywhere. The professors in the field, in the concentration, include Professor Jenna Hartel, who does information experience, Professor Nadia Cady in communities and values, myself and Professor Kilty, and a brand new professor that's joining us in a teaching stream, Dr. Allison Kaysen. So that's pretty much what I've got for you. I hope that made sense. I've got bad internet, so I'm kind of anxious about that. Anyways, thanks, and I'll be in that breakout room after with Sydney.
Great, thank you very much. And next we have Professor St. Cyr to talk about the user experience design concentration.
Yes, hello everyone. So the UXD concentration is a fairly large and fast growing concentration in our program. Really happy to be part of it. I joined in 2016 when the concentration just started, and since then we've hired 4 new professors, 2 professors that are with us today, and then we have 2 new professors that are starting in January of 2021. So just in almost a month. So I'm really happy to see how this concentration has evolved over time. So I'm going to go back to the core principle of the iSchool, which is people, technology, and information. And in UX, we really study how the people interact with technology for basically to access information, right? It's all about the medium between people and technology so that they can have easy access to information. So we basically want to design technology so that people have these amazing experiences when they want to access information and they have an information need. So just look at what's going on right now with respect to being online and remote teaching, right? Like what an area that has grown in the past few months, right? Like, but you can also, if you also pay attention to people's experiences, you'll see like some people use Microsoft Teams, some people use Blackboard Collaborate, some people use Zoom, some people use WebEx. There's all these different kinds of tools right now that are designed, And if you go online and you start researching some of these tools, you'll quickly uncover the kind of experiences people are having. Some people like a feature in Zoom better than a feature in Blackboard Collaborate, for example. But then other people will say, well, when it comes to breakout rooms, this piece of software allows me to do so much more than that other pieces of software, right? And you see how in the last few months, in fact, years as well, but specifically in the last few months, these companies have responded to improving the experiences of people, right? Like I think Zoom releases a new version of its software every 2 or 3 weeks with incremental changes because they're listening to people, they're taking into account the users' feedback that they're getting. And, you know, we all know how much feedback they're getting these days. And then they're actually trying to understand from these users' feedbacks, what are some of the needs of people's, and what are some of the goals and some of the current pain points and obstacles. And then they're trying to address these pain points and obstacles and to turn these needs into successful features that will enable people to do what they want to do. So basically, this is what the UX concentration is we look at how people sort of quote unquote react, or what kind of experiences people have with a piece of technology, and we deeply empathize with their needs, their obstacles, their pain points, their current ways of solving their problems. And by using all that knowledge, which we call UX research knowledge, then we come up with ideas and solutions, and we envision better experiences and future experiences so that we can produce designs that enable people to reach their goals and hopefully, in many cases, eliminate some of the pain points that they've had in their current experiences. And of course, in order to validate all these assumptions and all these designs that we're making, we go back to people and users in order to do an evaluation and make sure that what we have designed is actually what people are wanting to have in terms of an experience. So as I said, we'll have very soon, in about a month, we'll have 5 professors in this concentration. We have also other professors in the Faculty of Information that are doing design-related research and design-related courses. So it's not just only in UX, but there's other profs also that are kind of joining the experience adventure, if you want. We have 2 courses in the fall, the foundation courses and the information architecture course. Then we have a user-centered design course and a user interface design course in the winter. And then several of our students go to co-op between their first and second year. And then we come back with a last course called Representing UX, which is a capstone UX course. Fairly successful co-op program so far in UX. We have roughly between 20 to 25 placements a year, depending on the year. Some years 15 to 25-ish. We've had people at Bosch, Autodesk, Ontario Digital Services, FreshBook, a lot of banks, TD Bank, CIBC, Scotia Banks, Tangerine. We've had people at the University Health Network, Deloitte Digital, Click Health. So there's quite a range of co-op placement in this concentration. I would also like to point out that UX is also a great toolbox for other people in other concentrations. For example, in the last few years, we've seen quite an increase in the number of people from library science and archive who combined LIS or ARM with UX. There is a profession in the field of library called UX librarian. It is a defined profession. And then what better place to be a UX librarian than come to our faculty where you can study both library science and UX within the same degree, right? Like there's also people in museum who are interested in UX when it comes to digital artifacts, digital technology, the experiences of people visiting museums. And more recently, in fact, we've seen in the last 6 months, a lot of museum starting to wanting to be online, so wanting to have this online presence that maybe they didn't have pre-COVID. So this is actually quite exciting, in fact. We also have a few people, and I want to make this point because I think this is important, from culture and technology or from critical policy and information system, joining our concentration to study both back end and front end when it comes to ISD and UXD, but also study sometimes dark patterns of design, or what is the impact of design on policy, on society, and the impact of designing all these technology on humans. So there's great complements here with respect to that. So think about it in terms of UX is not just if you want to become designers or UX designers, but it also can provide you with some kind of toolbox that could be helpful in your primary concentration. So if you have more questions about the technicality of the concentration, the courses, some of the requirements, I will be in the breakout rooms, in a breakout room in a few minutes, and I'll be able to answer all the questions. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. And next we have, oops, there we go, Professor Lyons to talk about the Information Systems and Design concentration. Welcome back.
Thank you, Andrea. It is nice to be back, and I did not formally welcome everybody when I was here the first time talking about our pandemic response, but I want to say welcome to everybody. Glad you are here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Information Systems and Design concentration because I am also the liaison for that within the Master of Information program. So information systems, as I'm sure you are aware, are everywhere. They affect all aspects of our lives and work, even more so now that we are working remotely, of course. And as such, they play a crucial role in today's society. For many businesses and organizations, innovations in information systems and information processes are critical for them to remain competitive and for them to survive. For individuals, our personal and social lives are now mediated more than ever by a growing array of these information systems. As information systems design professionals, we help shape how people get work done through information systems. We lead or participate in multidisciplinary teams to analyze, design, and implement innovative and effective information systems. So basically what that means is we work with stakeholders, so the place or the group or the person or the organization that is wanting to solve a problem using an information system or improve upon how they solve existing problems using an information system, to understand what the challenge is in the real world that needs to be solved or improved through the use of an information system. So that's about requirements. What are the requirements for this system? We work with the stakeholders to understand the tasks or the processes that need to be carried out through or supported by an information system or systems, and then we architect and design, improve, create new processes, and architect and design systems by creating models and representations of the real world challenge and translating that, or so to help developers and programmers translate that into a technical solution. We then work with people to build, implement, deploy, and maintain that information system in the context in which it was deployed. So let's consider a timely example. Everyone's picking one that's related to the situation that we find ourselves in globally. But before the COVID-19 restrictions, most people did their shopping, let's say for groceries, in stores. Right? Of course, those grocery stores had existing information systems that they were using to support the business that they were in. For example, they would have a website, they would have an inventory management system, that would connect to their point of sale systems, so that when something gets low on the shelf, they know to replace it. They would connect to other information systems at their suppliers, at their partner organizations, and they would have self-checkout systems perhaps in some cases, and they would have reward systems. So there's all these systems that exist. But basically then what happens is enter COVID, and now there's this new need, these new requirements to enable customers to shop for and order their groceries online for delivery or for pickup, for example. So in comes the information systems professionals, that's us. We would identify the need, the requirements, define the task, the processes that the customer would carry out to get their groceries ordered. We would identify existing information systems that this new systems or set of systems would have to interface with. And then we would build models that explain to the development team or an external vendor how to build the system. So these are the kinds of tasks that we would carry out as information systems professionals. These information systems, as I've already mentioned, are everywhere. They impact everything about us and everything we do. And there is a need for people who can understand the real-world challenge, can translate it into these specifications for a technological solution to be developed in such a way that that solution does the right things and then does those things in the right way within the specific social and cultural context that they're being used and deployed. So studying information systems at the Faculty of Information is a unique and very special opportunity. And many people have already touched on this, many of my colleagues, because it is such a multidisciplinary environment, and it is a place where we can become adept at the kinds of tasks I just described, but at the same time become very embedded in the notions of the social and cultural and the social justice and political issues surrounding the use of these systems. You can take courses in knowledge management, information policy, digital curation, records management, data science, UXD, all of these other areas that will enhance your ability to play that role of translating need into systems across different domains. And because of this, our alumni work in a wide range of organizations and industry, including the financial services, technology services, healthcare, law, government, marketing, communications, nonprofits, many, many more. And there's a lot of very exciting roles that our graduates take on, including application support specialist, architect, information security architect, business analyst, business systems consultant, and so on and so on, and they're listed in the website. Now more than ever, we need information systems and design professionals to help shape how people get work done through information systems. And I'm excited to talk to you in the breakout room about more details of the program and the roles that you can take on with this program, this degree. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And next we have Professor Furness to talk about the knowledge management and information management concentration.
Okay, hello. Can you see me? I'm not sure. Yes, there I am. I think so. All right. Hello, everyone. So knowledge management and information management, knowledge and information get used interchangeably a lot. We separate them in the name of this concentration for a really good reason. For example, people talk about information overload. I've got information overload. I'm sure you've all experienced that. We never talk about knowledge overload. And actually, it's at that point that really describes very carefully the difference between having information all around you in documents and actually having passed them through the eye of the needle into your mind to be able to actually know and use these things. So information and knowledge are very, very different. Information management is very closely related to the archives and records management concentration that Professor Sertam spoke so articulately about. Information management goes a little bit beyond records to imagine information that comes into an organization from the outside, conversations that happen, and decisions that get made. So there's a bit of a broader purview there. But information generally, as I say, is out there in the environment. And KMIM is very, very oriented to workplaces. So if we think about a workplace that's got a lot of information in the environment, it's also got people. And people is where knowledge resides. This is a bit of a simplification, but we could say that information is in documents and knowledge is in the head. I argue that for a long time, but I've only got my 5 minutes, so it'll do for now. If we think about knowledge in the head, we start to have some pretty serious problems. When knowledge used to be represented in books in libraries, and we just had libraries and librarians, the problem was a bit simpler. But now knowledge is distributed across lots of members in an organization. And sometimes it's what's known as tacit knowledge, that is knowledge that you know, but you can't easily describe. And that's sometimes embodied as expertise. And so we have to start to worry about or think about workplace questions like, how do we get people to share knowledge with each other? How do we get people to actually exchange what they need to get their work done? One thing we do know, and this is my own research, is if you build tools for people to share, they don't actually share necessarily. That doesn't actually do it. So it's a harder problem than just putting people in the sandbox and hoping for the best. What happens when someone leaves an organization? They have worked there for a long time, they have learned a lot. Sometimes organizations do need to forget things, but sometimes they need to be able to remember them too. And so solving that kind of problem of what happens when knowledge walks out the door is of great interest to us. Locate expertise in a very large organization. If the organization has hundreds or even thousands of members, perhaps distributed in more than one place, and a hard problem walks in the door, who in the organization is actually best able to deal with that? That's an interesting and particularly difficult or vexing knowledge management problem. We think about organizations and groups of people working together. How do groups actually work together, or sometimes at cross purposes? How can groups of people who share expertise, how do they teach and learn with each other? How do they help each other? We sometimes use the term communities of practice to talk about how groups of professionals or people with expertise tend to self-organize into groups that share. It's a very interesting area to study. How do they, in fact, divide memory between them and divide expertise between them? How can we use information to support knowledge creation in an organization? If we think about an organization as particularly being able to learn from its mistakes, being able to get smarter from the information and knowledge that come into the organization, how can we make an organization make smarter, better decisions? Everyone's been talking about COVID, and I don't think I should leave myself out of that party. We see a lot of knowledge management problems when we think about COVID. The tsunami of emerging scientific evidence is swamps researchers, it swamps scientists. How can we do synthesis and make sense of this sometimes contradictory flood of information? How can we do what's knowledge translation, which is taking what's learned in the lab and make it applicable to public health officials in the field, trying to make decisions about what people are able to do and not do? When you're told not to sit on a park bench or you'll be fined in the spring, when you're told not to have people over to your house without a mask on, when small businesses are closed but large ones are told to stay open, there is at least presumably evidence to support that. And although that sounds like an easy situation, in actual fact, it really is pulling out very important needles from a very, very large haystack. So these are the kinds of knowledge problems that knowledge management tries to work with. Again, on the information management side, it's very close to records management. On the knowledge side, though, we think about not just tools, we think about policy, we think about behavior, and above all, we actually think about organizational culture. Going back to what I said, if you build tools for people to share information, they don't necessarily. So knowledge management is very much concerned with people's behavior. In terms of studying information management and knowledge management at the iSchool, it's a concentration that pairs extraordinarily well with many others. In fact, it shares required courses with archives and records management, so that's a very natural pairing. It pairs well with library and information science. After all, we're concerned with the information needs of individuals. It mixes very well with user experience design. If we're building an intranet, we actually need to think not just about how easy and ergonomic it is, but how well we are able to support the information behaviors and information needs of its users. So those are examples of concentrations that fit very, very well together. The kinds of jobs that our graduates have from KMIM, extremely varied. Sometimes you'll see titles like knowledge management or knowledge services director or portal or intranet manager. Sometimes it's business analyst. Very often it's consultant. People who do knowledge management out there in the world tend to do it in large organizations or in government. I sometimes say you get hired for information management, but you get valued for knowledge management. And so it's a kind of a concentration credential that's enormously useful in any kind of environment, any you're applying for where managing information is needed. To be able to attend and say, I understand information management, but I can actually bring a lot more to it too. The information people can't see, the information that's in people's heads. The courses you take are fairly obviously well defined on the website and in the syllabus. The courses start with 1003, which is Information Systems Services and Design. That's a leveling technology literacy course. You take then 2 courses in common with archives and records management. That's Managing Organizational Records and Metadata Standards. Then there are 2 more. One is 2176, which is Information Management in Organizations, Models and Platforms. That's actually the flagship knowledge management course. And that's where dealing with sense making and knowledge creation and decision making all come together in one model. And then there's 1230, which is Management of Information Organizations. That course is a great deal because it's your entire MBA all fit into one half course. Enormously useful for understanding how organizations work. I said that this concentration pairs very well with other concentrations. I think, and of course I'm biased, but I think it's the most personally relevant concentration for all of you, because you're going to be working in an organization, almost everybody. You're going to be working with other people, almost all of you. You're going to be dealing with information and knowledge and information problems and knowledge problems. So even if your passion lies outside of KMIM, having some exposure in this area is going to make you a more effective professional. So I'll be happy to obviously meet people in the breakout room, and I look forward to chatting with you. Thanks a lot.
Great, thank you. And next we have Professor Shea to talk about the Critical Information Policy Studies concentration.
Okay, just making sure I'm set up here. Given that we're nearing the end of our time, and there's just my Professor Andritzos after me, I'm going to whiz through Critical Information Policy Studies, and in the breakout session, I will be able to answer lots of questions about more specifics about the courses that are taught and the expertise of the folks that are teaching in this concentration. So Critical Information Policy Studies, in a nutshell, broadly examines the social and policy aspects of information and communication technologies. Specific concerns include issues of equity, inclusion, and access, digital and data literacy in an age of mis and disinformation, privacy and surveillance, whether this be corporate surveillance or social surveillance, the impacts of data on discrimination, the historical trajectory of the development of information technologies and policies, the political economy of information and communication technologies, intellectual property and how traditional knowledges are considered, informational labor, issues of equity, access, and inclusion in the tech sector, digital labor and precarity epitomized by the gig economy, and tech regulation and governance. Why should you study in this concentration? Policy impacts everything that we do in the information field. Just look at the news cycle this semester, just a couple of news headlines for the New York Times. FTC decision on pursuing Facebook antitrust case is said to be near. So there's lots of interesting issues and debates about whether and how to regulate the tech monopolies. TikTok cracks down on QAnon and hate speech. So how has a fringe political group, impacted political discourse? Appeals court says Uber and Lyft must treat California drivers as employees. Well, they lost that with the California ballot initiative in November, but how do you regulate, if at all, the gig economy? Activists turn facial recognition tools against the police. So issues of predictive policing, lots of interesting issues there. And in terms of how various municipalities are pushing back against these sorts of tools, why the government is suing Google. So lots of issues, once again, with tech regulation. This is happening globally. The digital divide starts with the laptop shortage. So alluding to some of the really challenging issues that the pandemic has created in terms of digital inclusion. All of these issues you'll be able to interrogate critically from the perspective of scholars, policymakers, and civil society advocates. Why here? You'll be able to study with faculty that are interdisciplinary. They come from the sciences, they come from the humanities, they come from the social sciences. Faculty expertise is computer and data science to communication and information studies. Across the Tri-Campus, we have stellar scholars whose graduate home is at the Faculty of Information. They're from UTM's Institute of Communication, Culture, Information, and Technology, and UT Scarborough's Department of Arts, Culture, and Media. So let me just give you a little preview of some of the stuff that we do in the program. I teach a core course this semester called Knowledge and Information in Society, the sort of gateway course into some of the other courses. We're looking at historical debates about the information society, the political economy of digital tech firms, AI visions and values, ethics of algorithms, digital literacy, digital inclusion, surveillance capitalism, digital labor, tech humanism, Canada's digital charter, some of the new privacy legislation that has just been announced from the federal government, and a range of issues, including environmental impact of ICTs and diversity in the tech sector. Readings tend to be scholarly, tech-focused, policy-focused, and from critical journalism. The types of skills and knowledge that you will learn, a key element is developing diverse research and communication writing skills. So developing different forms of knowledge mobilization about the issues for specific audiences, for instance, crafting policy briefs, creating scoping documents, unpacking structures of participation in policymaking. Graduates in our program work in the public and the private sector in various policy contexts, and many pursue doctoral work, and many pursue the CIPS concentration by combining it with other concentrations, and so there's some nice mixtures of LIS and CIPS, CNT and CIPS, there's HCDS and CIPS, and also UX and CIPS. So lots of great fun things. Anyway, I'll see you all soon. Bye.
All right, thank you. And finally, we have Professor Andritsos to talk about the human-centered data science concentration.
Can you all see me? I don't know.
Yes.
Hi, everybody, and welcome from me too. Last but not least, I hope. So I will talk briefly about, I see we're over time a bit, about the human-centered data science, which is the latest concentration that we have added in our program. So many people have discussed already about the study of different phenomena in different contexts, in different domains. We talked about COVID and the different problems that it has given us in records management, in information systems, in different issues of policy. But how do we arrive at getting some more concrete information, more measurable information about the results? By analyzing the data, right? A lot of people right now are collecting data in the health domain, in the policy domain, in different types of problems that have appeared. So in the human-centered data science concentration, we're mostly dealing with the analysis of SATS data. Beyond the storage that is discussed in the information systems and design concentration in the database class, we move on to discuss about the statistics behind the data, about programming, in order to arrive at some results that are more concrete, more tangible, and of course get some interesting measures, interesting results through the analytics class. So this is a class I'm teaching, so what we discussed there is information that is previously unknown, it's hidden, and it can give us quite new information into the new domain. So it is an increasing concentration. It can be combined with other concentrations, and we are also adding more colleagues. So we have hired one person who's going to join us in January, and we're hiring another one. As I said, it is a new concentration. We started last year, and it is becoming very successful. So what you become after you finish a data scientist, a data engineer. People have taken roles in the government. Data is becoming more and more available, and the knowledge to be extracted from the data is still hidden. People start their own companies. They work as data engineers. You can even become a programmer if you want. So there's many and modern things that you can become after finishing at the HCDS, and I would be very happy to answer more questions in the breakout room in a Thank you.